Welcome to The Explainer. What if I told you that one of the most powerful strategic tools in business, well, it isn't something you learn in business school. It's actually hidden inside a safety certification. Today, we're going to crack open ISO 45001, and we're not just looking at it as some compliance headache. No, we're reframing it as a masterclass in risk, leadership, and straight-up strategy.
All right, let's just dive right in by tackling a huge misconception. You know the one. If you're thinking that preparing for the ISO 45001 exam is all about memorizing a bunch of safety rules and accident stats, you're missing the whole point. I mean, it couldn't be further from the truth. See, the fundamental idea that's baked right into the standard, it's a total game changer. This is not a rule book you memorize for a test. Think of it more like a blueprint for building a system that's designed from the ground up with one single goal: to see harm coming and stop it before it ever has a chance to happen.
Okay, so this brings us to our first really big shift in thinking. To get ISO 45001, you've got to take that old compliance checklist mentality and just throw it out. You have to embrace a completely different way of looking at what safety even is.
Yeah, think about it. The old way of thinking was pretty simple, right? An accident happens, it must be the worker's fault. Well, ISO 45001 completely flips that script. It says a safety failure is not an individual error. It's a symptom of something way deeper: a flawed system, weak governance, bad planning. So the whole focus shifts from asking who's to blame to asking what in our system is broken and how do we fix it. And really, that's the key takeaway here. This mindset shift, it's everything. To really succeed with this, you have to stop thinking like you're just enforcing rules. You have to start thinking like you're designing the system itself, looking for weaknesses in how the organization is built, not just pointing fingers when someone messes up. But look, a system is only as strong as the people who are leading it, right? And that brings us to our next big idea, this leadership-first mindset. Because according to ISO 45001, a real culture of safety, it doesn't just bubble up from the bottom. Nope, it has to be driven from the very, very top. And ISO 45001 is incredibly clear about this. Accountability for safety, it doesn't just belong on the factory floor or with the safety manager. It lives in the C-suite. Top management is directly on the hook for championing safety, for funding it, and for weaving it into the very fabric of how the business runs. And you can bet the exam is going to test your ability to spot the difference between real commitment and, just paying lip service to it. It's not about leaders making speeches or putting up a few posters. It's about real, genuine engagement. Like, is safety actually in the business plan? Are workers being brought into the conversation on decisions that affect them? That's the real standard of proof. So if leadership is the driver, then what's the engine? Well, now we're going to pop the hood and look at the core components of this systemic engine, all the parts that have to work together to actually make prevention happen. A strong system has to start with a really wide-angle lens. You have to consider the organization's unique situation, things like its culture or how much it depends on outside contractors. Then you get to identifying hazards, and this is key. It goes way beyond just physical stuff. The standard makes it clear we have to look at psychosocial risks too. We're talking about things like burnout, intense stress, fatigue. All the stuff we now know is a huge threat to people's health. Okay, this next concept is foundational. You absolutely have to master this. The exam will, for sure, test you on this hierarchy of controls. See, the standard always wants you to remove the hazard completely if you can. Relying on things like personal protective equipment, PPE, that's always seen as the absolute last resort, the weakest option you have. You only use it when the better options just aren't possible. Here's another huge shift. It's all about how we measure success. The old way, totally reactive. We just count accidents after they happened. But the standard pushes us to be proactive. That means we need to focus on leading indicators, things like tracking near-miss reports or the findings from safety audits. Why? Because those things help you spot the weaknesses before they turn into an actual incident. And listen, this system can't just be a static document sitting on a shelf. It has to be alive. It has to be responsive. It needs to be smart enough to handle the risks that come with change, like when you bring in new equipment or new people. It has to make sure contractors are held to the exact same safety standards, and it has to be constantly testing its own emergency plans, and critically, learning from every single incident to make the whole system stronger. Okay, so we've seen how the system works, but why does mastering all this stuff matter so much? I mean, beyond just passing an exam? Well, the answer is all about its strategic value.
Because when it comes down to it, this certification is really about trust. It sends a powerful signal to the whole world. When you have a well-implemented ISO 45001 system, you're telling everyone that your organization is well-run, it's responsible, and it's resilient. It's basically a stamp of approval for high-quality governance. And make no mistake about it, some very powerful people are watching. Regulators, they see this as proof that you're doing your due diligence. Insurers, they use it to figure out your risk and set their prices. And here's the big one. Investors are now using it to judge your operational stability and your ESG performance. That's environmental, social, and governance criteria.
So here's the bottom line. In this modern world of ESG investing, this standard is the proof behind the promise. Think of it as the human protection pillar of ESG. It's what shows that an organization's fancy claims about being sustainable and socially responsible, well, it shows they actually hold up when it comes to the real-world job of protecting their people.
And that really leaves us with the one question that gets to the very heart of ISO 45001. It's the question you should be asking about your own organization. Is it just built to react when things go wrong? Or is it truly designed, from the boardroom all the way to the front line, to prevent harm from ever happening in the first place?